Hey, what's going on, everybody? I'm Ben Backus.
And I'm Kevin Paulin, and welcome to the Falling Up Podcast, where we have conversations about turning obstacles into opportunities. And on today's show, we have the pleasure of being joined by Mr. Nicholas Aponte.
This is definitely one I think you want to listen to. Nick served 23 years in prison, and what he was able to accomplish during those 23 years made it so he was able to come out and hit the ground running, both from an employment and personal standpoint, but also a societal standpoint, and just what he has and giving back and sharing his experience with his life.
Inspiring, to say the least. We touched on his personal principles of humility and accountability, and the trinity of mind, body, and soul, and just so many great tips, as he was so transparent about his whole lifelong journey to this point. And yeah, I'm so excited for this one. I'm definitely ready to rock and roll and dig in. So with that said, welcome to the Falling Up Podcast.
That I try to live in my life, be it service, community, showing up, accountability, all these things are certainly highlighted through your testament and your story. So I'm really excited to dive in and get to know you and get to know what you've been through and what you got going on now. You want to just dive on in? Is that that the game plan?
Yeah, let's I would share your name and where you're from. We'll start there.
Sure. Trying to get used to the headphones.
Yeah, it takes a minute hearing the feedback. And
10 minutes you're going to forget.
You'll forget us that.
In 10 minutes.
Yeah, so my name is Nicholas Aponte. I live currently in Wallingford, Connecticut. We've been stood in Wallingford for the last 4 years and change since I returned home.
Oh, so once you came home, you went straight to Wallingford?
No, I went and I lived with my family in Wallingford, Connecticut.
Okay.
I stood there for about 2 months, and I so determined to try to get started. Got right on my thing, and started working 2 jobs, and I would say around the 2 months and a half, I was able to go out on my own.
All right.
Can we jump in a little bit just to backstory? You mentioned coming home, returning, mm-hmm. and that was something that really stood out, is just to see all the things you've accomplished in such a short period of time after kind of being away from society for a while. Do you mind kind of jumping into the backstory and just talking about kind of how you got to where you are?
Sure. For those who are not aware, I was arrested in 1995 for the crime of felony murder. I was 17 at the time. Took about 3 years before I was able to get a decision during trial, and I was found guilty, sentenced to 38 years. Quite a journey, I had to say. Ended up serving roughly 23 years of that 38 years. Had an opportunity through the Juvenile Reform Act that was started on a federal level with the Supreme Court of the United States, and then eventually, the states had to adopt that law and kind of get it into their criminal justice system. And I was given the opportunity in 2018 for parole, and I was unanimously paroled. And I came home, but I'm sure there's a lot of questions you would have to ask, during my incarceration, my return home. So I'll leave that up to you.
Yeah, no, and I'm sure, I know, Kev, you got your list over there, but something I like to kind of conceptualize things in terms of like mindset and intent. Mm-hmm. And prior to incarceration, what was kind of your mindset? What were you like? Who were you?
Yeah, so prior to incarceration, I was, I thought I knew who I was, but who knows who they are at that age.
Right.
I grew up in Waterbury, Connecticut, in the difficult parts, if I can say that, generously. It was very tough areas. Grew up around a abusive father, who I ended up learning wasn't my actual biological father, but that's another story in itself. I did pretty well in school, and I don't know, wasn't really of a dreamer, kind of like just try to survive most of the time in life. Didn't know what to expect out of myself, and eventually, I became a teenager, and of course, that sort of self-expression that comes along with that and that uncertainty started to settle in, and I started to get molded by the streets and that lifestyle and that culture. And because I was suffering from challenges at home, the being out there in that element, felt a lot more comfortable for me. And I started to make those tough decisions, those bad decisions, where you think everybody's your friend, is your family, and that sort of ignorance that comes with that age. So it was, I had good moments growing up, but more challenging than anything. But I thought that was maybe like the status quo for life, and not realizing until I was far more older that how much I missed out on very valuable lessons.
Mm-hmm. So take us through your thought process of trial, because at that age to even process the whole court system, then to go on trial and fighting for your life, essentially, like, what was that thought? Because I could only imagine to be at that age to go through something like that.
Yeah, I think.
Because you tried as an adult?
I was tried as an adult.
Yeah.
So I think that's a good question. It's a very good question. When I was arrested for this crime, and obviously we know the severity of the crime, it's a felony murder, and what I didn't understand was the dynamic of law back then. I mean, like, who really does?
Yeah.
When I was charged with the crime, I knew, I had no weapon. I didn't hurt anybody. Didn't know somebody was going to lose their life. Those type of things I couldn't see unfolding as they did. And I felt a little safe in my role of the crime, and believing that, it wouldn't be that severe. And I remember my first attorney at that time, she was just like, this is very serious. There's a chance you can never go home. And I'm like, for what? I mean, I didn't do anything wrong. The facts are the facts. And she was like, no, being charged as an adult, you are, through the statutes of the law, you're being held criminally liable for the principal offender. So it's as if you are the actual offender. And I just couldn't digest that. I couldn't process that type of culpability and that type of the basically the sentence that can come along with that. And I was offered a 35-year sentence, and I think as time went on, I'm just like, there's no way I can take that much time. I just turned 18, then I was 19, then I was 20, then I was 21 when I finally went to trial. Mm-hmm. So it was a very, very difficult thing to process. At the same time, I'm away from my family. I can't, my son is obviously growing without me. I'm in a very hostile environment. There are so many different layers there of trying to survive, mentally, physically, your safety. There was a lot going on, and I end up falling victim to that culture also, in the sense where I had to survive and protect myself. So it was very challenging, and it just got to the point where I didn't think I would ever be found guilty. I just couldn't see it, and then when they finally did find me guilty, I'm saying to myself, okay, well, this is my life then. I just succumbed to it.
Was it that? So how you say that, in my mind, it's almost like, hey, just dive right into like acceptance that this is what it's going to be. What were there any? I find it seems like that is the best case scenario, right? That one can be like, okay, this is the life that I'm given. I can either accept it or fight it. I can relate to that just on the level, on a totally different level, right? Like when I broke my back and was told by the doctor, like, you're never going to walk again. It was like, oh, well, I can fight this, or I can just try to accept it with it and go with life. But it seems so different in the sense, I'm trying to figure out how to articulate this thought. Was there any, how did you come to that acceptance? I guess that's the easiest way to put it, because that's such a deep thing to accept, especially when it sounds like there's this piece of, well, by the facts, like why am I here? Like, this doesn't make sense to me, right?
Yeah, and I think, which I end up learning later on in life, were the stages of grief, right? So it's denial, like heavily in denial about my role, denial about it's actually happened to me, even though I'm 3 years now into a sentence. And as much as I kept telling myself there's no way I can serve so many years, at the same time I'm telling myself it's very possible. And it takes several years before I get to that convergence where it's just like, okay, now, yeah, you're here. And I think that was about 8 years of incarceration. But at that same time, my maturity level was growing. So there's a level of acceptance that totally comes with it. And I was pursuing post-conviction remedies and stuff that's afforded to everybody who's serving a sentence. I just thought that to myself, I'll go along with that shot. But I was just preparing myself for doing a lengthy sentence. And I knew there was a lot about me that was that needed to change. And I just started to invest my energy into that, and rather than invest my energy into trying to get home, because I just couldn't see anywhere around it. I had confessed to the crime. I had, all these other things were against me, and I said I'd rather, at this moment just concentrate on fixing what I believe was broken inside me.
What did that look like? Fixing what's broken inside you?
Learning how to be humble first was probably the biggest thing, which was very difficult. Elevating my intellectual capability, just expanding my vocabulary, taking the street slang out of me, and at the same time trying to build confidence. And once again, as I explained before, now I'm in a prison setting. I'm not in a county jail setting, which is obvious. I don't know if you're familiar with that type of prison dynamic, but it just changes completely. So I'm dealing with life as a convict, as a person who's actually has to do time. Those type of things are all being mixed in, and it's a constant tornado, just circling, trying to make sense of myself too. So it's gradual, and I had to learn to be patient with myself, because there are a lot of traps along the way. How not to fall into the same level of violence that's being done around you or trying to be done against you. Trying to discover ways of non-conflict in an area where conflict is the norm, right?
How do you do that? What were some practical
ways?
That
took a lot of time. First and foremost, actually seeing the person outside in front of me as a human being, which I didn't really quite know how to do growing up. If you weren't a relative, somebody who was valuable to me, I really didn't care too much about you. So I had to learn how to look at everybody being human. And I think what went hand in hand with that was finally realizing the severity of my crime. Like, this was a real crime. I was there. I seen it happen, but my mind really just kept telling myself, you did nothing wrong. So there was kind of like a glossing over of a terrible tragedy. And I had to keep trying to look at that until I saw, the victim as a human being first, his family, everything that he aspired to be, and what got taken away from him, and realizing that, even though I didn't possess a weapon or actually pull a trigger, that there was a role that I played in that crime. So that was a hard pill to swallow too. So there was I had to just do things very slowly, and move in a direction that I knew that I had to heal and learn to love myself again. And that obviously took a very long time. In that environment, it's almost impossible to do.
But you did it.
I did. Almost miraculously. Some people attribute that to our creator or the universe, whatever their belief system might be. I really don't know who to attribute that to. I just know I put the work in and I wanted it. And I tell anybody, if you really do want something, you have to put the work in 100%. Trying is not good enough. You got to want it.
Jumping 2 feet in.
That's Benny's mantra right there.
Well, it makes life easier. I want to touch on, and I know I might be going into like putting the therapy hat on, but I'm actually interested to see if you can kind of articulate how you were able to get to chip away to that point where it's, hey, I'm able to see my role in it and acknowledge that, because I think for so many people, and myself included, so many times in life, it's like I'm not going to look for what I don't want to see, so I'm just going to avoid it. I'm going to avoid it because taking personal accountability and responsibility, it allows the ship to move forward, but it's also that huge barrier of entry of actually taking that ownership. Oh, yeah. Was there practical tips that you learned, mentors that you utilize? How, like, because that's pretty high level stuff right there.
Yeah, so having the motivation first, obviously, is the most important element of that. Second thing is the humbleness to realize that there is something wrong and you want to fix it. I think after that, I basically got into a lot of self-help, manuals. Started reading about history, psychology. Like, I started reading about so many different subject matters where I could try to even, many different religions, just trying to get a dent into understanding myself. And the more I was able to gain that knowledge, the better I was able to be at those type of things, especially being humble, which it's kind of hard for anybody, especially men, to do in any given circumstance. And as I got, more acclimated with that and second nature to me, it felt good. It felt good to be silent. And I did, I absorbed a lot of elements of Buddhism at the same time, to be able to meditate and to actually live with thoughts. And I think that was like the main thing, being able to stay with your thoughts, and to look at them without reaction, to not feeding them to so much, because, a past is a past. It's gone forever, but, it definitely lives in our mind and our being. And being able to live with that is everything. And the more I was able to do that, I was able to say to myself, okay, I'm able to see this, and I just felt more confident about myself. And I think I was very fortunate, and I say this to a lot of classes that I speak to, a lot of universities that I have the opportunity to go and speak in front of students, is somehow I was able to get my hands on the victims' letters to the court, sort of as almost like a mistake that I had them in my legal documents. And I read a lot about the young man that was, murdered in my case. And I read about his family, and I read about, everything that he aspired to be. And the more I got to learn about him, like I said, it brought color to something where it was blurry at one time. And I read the father's thoughts. And he, in a lot of ways, it gave me more forgiveness than I think the most common person would give after their son was, tragically murdered. And I thought to myself, if he can have that humbleness and still kind of see some good in me, then, I got to be able to do at least the same thing for myself. And that's how I was able to start, basically, like you said, chipping away at certain elements. And it's a very, very long process. There's, along the way, like anything else, when you're learning, you fail and then you succeed, and it's a back and forth thing until what I end up telling myself was not to try to be perfect, that to try to create a good ratio. If I can do 7 times out of 10 these good things, then I think I'm in a good place.
Yeah, no. Woo.
Yeah.
But all that touched my heart. But I know one part to do something, and then because I'm a Buddhist, so that right there, you're right. But on top of that, the living with something that you've experienced and being okay with it. You know what I'm saying? Because I know myself, past mistakes that I have guilt to this day that I still deal with certain things will remind me of actions that I'm not too proud of. You know what I mean? I live with this guilt.
Oh yeah.
But to be still, you know what I'm saying, and be able to look at it for what it is and being accepted and being humble and accountable. Like you said, that's everything. That's the key to breaking through.
Oh yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So I feel that, man. That's I live that. I know. You know what I'm saying? During your because you mentioned self help, those manuals. Is there a book or some literature that stands out to you because I know you read a lot.
Oh yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I try to tell everybody, how much I have actually read while incarcerated. And I think most people can be like, well, you have all the time in the world. And I used to actually go through my day not thinking I had enough time to do what I wanted. And that's while I'm being incarcerated. I think two of the most impactful books one was James Allen, As a Man Thinketh, which I loved. And also Viktor Frankl wrote many books on his experience during the Holocaust. And he had one approach to logotherapy, and that was able to, further help me. I think the main book he had was Man's Kind Search for Meaning or something like that. And I just remember reading about his experience in the concentration camps and how he thought about one person's actions, and how despite anything you're going through, where at any given moment the next day you can be directed to these gas chambers, how you still had the power to be good and be positive, regardless of your situation. And you had literally a choice to do better, regardless, no matter what. I'm thinking, because I'm a history buff, I'm like, we're talking about 6 million people that we can account for who were executed. And how in the world were you able to keep your composure when you're watching, children and people of various ages just being executed, and you were still finding the beauty in life? And that helped me so much to deal with incarceration. And As a Man Thinketh, obviously, that's another introspective approach to can you be with your thoughts? Can you, be honest with yourself and those type of things? And those are probably the two most impactful, books I read. But I try to read so much. I read Malcolm X autobiography. I read so many different books, and I just needed to know the thoughts of people, the inner thoughts on what they were going through. These great figures in life and people that are not so well known of, and it just helped me. And that's I believe. What I love about history in the past is people who leave us a story. I think we owe it to ourselves to read it, to to at least be able to give the opportunity to hear their story.
Yeah, and I think what you touched on there that really resonated is that perspective is key, right? Perspective
Big
is
time.
our life, and it's the beauty of reading it, and it's why I too, not only the fact that you have these people that often either, if they're sharing their autobiography or memoir, they've literally spent their whole life writing it, right? Or you have someone who's writing like an educational topic on something who has spent their whole professional life with this one thing and then put it in X amount of pages for you to be able to cherish. But what reading for me does is it puts whatever the topic is in my awareness, and now I can strive to do it. And that is something that it sounds like you were able to do through avidly reading all of these books. It's, hey, I'm keeping self-betterment at the forefront of my mind. Were there other strategies in addition to reading, visualizations, prayer, meditations, things like that really helped you intentionally center your perspective and keep it where you wanted it to be?
Sure was. Every day I try to keep a 3-part balance, and that's a mind, body, and spirit. So in my mind, I'm reading, educating myself. Spiritually, I'm thinking about my connection to life, because we all know it's transitory and it's so fast. We're here and we're gone. And the body is something I did very well. I exercised every day in there. I had the opportunity. Try to eat well 99% of the time, and definitely always stood fit. I've lost a lot of that since I came home, but I needed to be able to survive that position in life, and I knew that I had to hit those three things every single day, and I made sure that, especially when I first woke up in the morning. This is a habit I still keep to myself. As soon as I wake up, I just don't jump up. I just try to stay there and think about how I'm living. I'm grateful to be living, and I always tell myself to this day, I say, can I make better choices? Can I be able to make the right decisions to honor myself and others? And I just go over this whole long list of things like that, and it just kind of sets the tone for the day. That was definitely one of the most helpful things that I did in there. But meditation, I did so much in there, constantly, because I had to basically get a grip of my mind the best I can in there, because you have no choice but to face it.
Yeah. Were you in most of the time? Were you in cells or in dorms?
I was in cells my entire incarceration.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
thank goodness.
Yeah, I'm about to say that helped with the meditation.
Yeah.
The dorms. Sheesh.
Yeah.
So now, just going on this 23-year journey,
Mm-hmm.
now we're at a place where mind, body, and spirit, you have these routines. You're reading. You've grown. You've matured. You're starting the healing process. And then we get to 2018. What like that whole, because you got sentenced for 38 years. You come home 23 years. So there was no, I'm sure at year 22, there was no like, I'm going home next year.
No.
So like, what was that process like to know that, okay, like what did that whole thing when the act passed, like how did that whole thing look like?
So it's a very good point. I think what served me very, very well was I started the self change very early in my incarceration. It's like around year 3, year 4 of my incarceration, and the good thing, it was genuine. Like, this is something that I really wanted. It gets to this point where the science starts coming out about the juvenile brain development, and I hear about it, but I really am not optimistic about it. I think it served me well, mostly because then it kind of made sense, because there was so much I was angry about with myself. Like, how did I find myself in this position? This is insane. I was a pretty smart kid. I would like to think that. The grades were well until they weren't well. Mm-hmm. And even though I was suffering this challenging family dynamic of abuse, why wasn't I able to make sense of life? And then finally, ultimately, end up in that position. So, those type of things bothered me greatly. And because that fueled me to start very early in my incarceration change, this 2018 rolls around, and there's a lot of big talk, like you actually might have this chance. But even then, I'm not quite optimistic. I'm just telling myself, I'll see it when I believe it. When it's in law and it's black and white, it's been passed by our Senate and our House of the state, then I'll believe it. And the great thing about a lot of the Buddhist principles that I had ascribed to was keeping balance. So staying that middle ground. I never get too excited, and I never got too sad. Mm-hmm. I try to always stay right there and stay balanced. The neutral way, I think it's called, or something. It's been a while. Mm-hmm. And that helped me greatly navigate that new process, because now it was real. Now it was, you definitely got a chance to go home. And I wasn't worried one bit when I went in front of the parole board. My character would speak for itself, and I knew what I had done the whole time. And that was obviously, agreed upon when I went there. So, once the law was passed, and then they said, we unanimously grant you parole, I felt a sense of relief, but even then, it's just like, well, until I'm walking out there, yeah. I still don't believe it. It's like getting lotto. Until I see those zeros,
right?
It's not real. And then it just got to that point where, I was being released that day, and I was not scared. I felt so calm, and I know I'm probably moving ahead here. I was very calm, and when they opened that gate and this was Whaley Ave, New Haven County, and I had to basically walk 3 blocks around to get to the front. That's where my family was going to be because they were letting me where the transport is for the inmates. I had a long walk, and I'm walking with 1 box, and I'm just thinking like I'm finally home, and none of it felt like surreal. It felt like it was a new chapter, and that transition was very well and very easy for me. Surprisingly, a lot of people like, what was going through your mind? Were you scared? And I was like, not at all, because I had prepared for that, and I was always humble to the fact that it had to happen one day, even if I came home at 55, which was the full extent of my sentence.
So did you envision like the whole walking out, seeing your family?
No, I didn't know how that was gonna feel. I think along the fact that I like the uncertainty of it. I like not knowing, I like the gate to open slowly and being able to feel that in person. I wasn't trying to think ahead, like, what am I going to do about this? What am I going to do about that? I was just like, just do it.
Wow. So now we're home, family excited.
Mm-hmm.
And so this 2018, we're in 2023. So you've done a lot.
Yeah.
In 5 years.
I did.
Just to jump in, and you're probably gonna ask this question anyway, but I just want to. To jump forward, healthcare and real estate. Were these things that you were dreaming about ahead of time, or did this happen organically after you came out?
So that's a good point, and I'm sorry I didn't, expound on that a little more. While I was incarcerated, 2 of the things that I end up joining was the volunteer hospice. So that was the first thing that I joined, and then they had a certified nursing assistant program within the prison hospital. And there was only 2 states in the United States that actually allowed an inmate to be an actual certified nursing assistant, and I was here in California. And I was able to, through a big interview process, because of course you can imagine the danger of an inmate being able to take care of another inmate, and what dangers that may pose. It's a long filtering process, and I was able to do both of those. I did hospice for 9 years, and I was a CNA for 10 years.
Wow.
So the only thing that when I came home in 2018, I just told myself I'm going to stick to the medical field and hopefully I'll get hired. And what happened is I came home on a Wednesday, and a friend of mine, Scott Lewis, who I had met while I was incarcerated, he was eventually exonerated. He did 20 years for basically being falsely charged and sentenced to a double homicide. And I knew him on the inside. We, became good friends. And he had been home, a few years prior to me. He heard I was coming home, and he called my mom up, and he said, "Hey, I need Nick to help me, manage my business. I have a real estate business. I'm just starting, and I need somebody I can trust, who has some good organizational skills. And I think that's him. I'm definitely gonna hire him." So I came home on a Wednesday. He picked me up on a Friday, and that was the beginning of my real estate career, which initially I really wasn't into that type of thing. I had gotten so accustomed to taking care of people naturally, and it felt great. I didn't want to lose that side neither. It kept me grounded. It kept me leveled. And eventually I got a phone call from a CEO that was in eye care. And eye care facilities, they're a network. They are a company that owns about 60 nursing homes. And the CEO called me and said, "Hey, I heard good things about you because they own a nursing home that actually houses former convicted felons or compassionate release." Mm-hmm. And he's like, "These guys talked about you in there, and when I heard you were being released, I wanted to interview you."
Wow.
And so he brought me in, and he interviewed me, brought me to a nursing home in Meriden, and gave me a tour, and he says, "I'm going to exempt your criminal record, and I'm going to hire you." And so right away I have 2 jobs. I'm an office manager for a real estate business, which I knew nothing about, but he gave me a lot of leeway and a lot of time to understand that dynamic. But I also had the CNA component and the healthcare component where that I knew very well. But it was out of a prison setting, which made things a lot easier. And those jobs I just stuck with.
I mean, I would have too.
Yeah.
Yeah, those are careers, and man, it's amazing to see the work you put in prison for it to be acknowledged and celebrated, and then rewarded when you come home.
No question.
On both sides, like that. That's man. That's beautiful, man.
And what's cool about that is I think it more or less goes along like just the facts or the truths of like the universe. And I don't mean that in like I really don't even mean that in like the spiritual way. Just like the idea like, hey, if I constantly put myself in a good situation, the likelihood of good things happening increases from a probability standpoint. And if I put myself in bad situations, the likelihood of bad things happening increases from a probability situation, right?
No question.
And it's like you just a day at a time walk this journey, putting yourself in the best position to succeed, and within what it sounds like a week or two, you like have this foundation already set. But from there, it sounds like there was, I'm sure, some learning curves in terms of. So let's just dive. What were some of those obstacles?
Yeah, big time. As you can imagine, from somebody, beginning their incarceration at age 17, coming home basically when they're 40. Now, I had some advantages where, people really couldn't tell my age. They saw me, they really thought I was a lot younger. So thank goodness for my mom's genes. Love you, Mom.
I also want to say you put the work in with your body, mind, and spirit for a
there you
long
go.
time every day. I think
kept,
that probably helped a little bit too.
Yeah, I kept a fresh spirit, and those things mattered. And so I'll say that answer with this. Because I am in a relationship, and that has been one of the most challenging things since being home. So naturally, you figure relationships are tough for people who go the traditional way, who don't go to prison and come out. You meet people, you have experience on that sort of thing. And I was explaining to my girlfriend, hey, I created identity in prison, right, in order to survive. Because in there, you have no identity. You're stripped of that, and you're given a number. You lose your roles as a brother, as a father, as a son and a friend, because those no longer exist in terms with the people who are home. So I had to, throughout that time of incarceration, create an identity for myself, because to walk through life with no identity is basically walking dead to me. It's you're not really living. And I was able to do that, and I was telling my girlfriend, I was like, we meet a lot of guys who were incarcerated with me, who did a lot of time, 20 years plus, 30 years plus. And I told her, I said, when you see them out here and they come up to me, what do you see about them? And they have a genuine respect for me, a genuine appreciation. They always say good things about me. And I said, I told her, I said, babe, I gained all that through nonviolence. I gained all that through understanding people. This respect is real respect, and these are from people who are hardcore, who have grown to be great men now out here. Then I come home and I'm thinking that is immediately transferable, and it's not. It's a different thing. Now I have to create another identity. Off that is pretty good, but I really do have to create another identity, and those were the traps that I fell into. Trying to understand my role in a relationship, trying to understand my role in society. So I had to go through those type of things. I couldn't become a real estate agent, immediately. So I had to get the educational requirements. I was able to take that test, but I couldn't take the state and federal test to actually be licensed to be a realtor. So I had to basically go in front of the board. Another board, a real estate board, and they had to determine whether I was suitable for that. So that was through the identity that I created since I've been home, and that took about 2 years to get that going. I was denied. going into nursing school, which was my goal. I wanted to be an oncology nurse. And to this day, I'm still challenged on that. And it bothered me because it's like, hey, I'm giving the most intimate care to people. The CNAs, the nursing assistants are at the bottom rung of the healthcare scale, but they do the most work with the residents and patients. They do the most hands-on, but you don't trust me to be a nurse.
Right.
So that was a difficult pill to swallow. So the pitfalls of relationships, and obviously, I had several, and then I came to the point where I have with my girlfriend now. And going through that dynamic is a whole nother story, trying to find my role in this, what I'm supposed to do, what I'm not supposed to do, being humble again, because we all know women can try to make us be too humble.
Yeah.
They'll try to stomp us out. But I love them because if you have the right one, they can make you the better human being than you can ever make yourself. They can help you with that element, and that's what I have right now. And we've been through our challenges, but she's been very patient with me. I've been very patient with her. So that's another level of compromise I didn't know how to do until I was actually in it. And that can be very stressful. That's one area of life. But overall, the typical challenges that people who are transitioning back to society have, I was very fortunate not to have any of those type of things. Like, I got employed. Like, isn't that like the most important thing? I was able to get housing. Another very important thing, like these things that create an identity and a level of citizenship, a lot of men and women who transition back home don't get that. So the normal pitfalls that people who transition back home encounter, I didn't have to go through all those, but the personal journey still, I did have to go through. It was very interesting.
And this is might be weird to say, but I feel like you did have to go through them. You just did it before you got out.
Yes.
Like you laid the groundwork so you were able to buy. It's like if you go from high school to college and you take the placement test and you place out of it's like you did your placement test when you were in there. So you were fortunate enough to be able to bypass some of that through years of work, right? So I don't know. That's just kind of.
No, you're right.
I think it almost comes off as almost diminishing what you were able to do, because it really, really is remarkable. And Kev, you might have something better than this, but I'm wondering a little bit, going to that identity and kind of talking about creating this new identity. What are your principles? What do you try to kind of live life by now?
Yeah, and it's basically the same principles that I had to establish within myself while I was incarcerated. And that was the number one thing is your life is worth living. I mean, we can beat ourselves up so much on different levels, justified or unjustified. I mean, my opinion. Once I was able to realize that, you're here, you're living, do the best with it, regardless of the circumstance. That was number one. Number two, which I was able to master while I was incarcerated, is being able to see the person in front of you as a human being, regardless of what's coming at you. Another high Buddhist quality. I wasn't, and this is the reason why I fell into a lot of the Buddhist principles, was I didn't want to feel like I forgave you because I had no choice. I'm forgiving you because God says I gotta forgive you. No, I love the approach of being able to forgive you because I actually want you to be better and me to be better. I want us both to be better in whatever the circumstances. So being able to do those type of things basically helped tremendously.
Yeah, again, the forgiveness piece is so great because it goes back to perspective. And I look at it as forgiveness isn't about the other person. It's about me letting go of a resentment that is only hurting me, and the other person 90% of the time doesn't even think about it or know it exists. It's only something that's tearing me down. So when I'm able to forgive, and I like the saying, you can forgive and not forget, right? I don't need to necessarily forget the thing that someone did, right? I can use that as a life lesson or the evidence to kind of carve out how I want them in my life or the role they play, but certainly any malice or resentment can be released.
Yeah, and forgiveness is so important because otherwise you have an albatross around your neck. It's like your hair and you can't move forward. And I don't know, I was able to realize how precious life is. And as long as I have that in gratitude, there's a lot of things that go right for me. When I start to lose that focus, which it has happened on occasion while I've been out here, the good thing is, like you said, the practice that I have put into place brings me back a lot faster than, let's just say, probably the average person. And I try to tell people all the time, can you try to lean on the way of gratitude? If you don't know what to be grateful for, well, then be silly and write a gratitude journal. I mean, I know it sounds silly, but you need to remember that there are blessings in life. And if you're able to freaking grasp those, you realize that it's really not that bad. You know, you tell me you broke your back, and I can't even imagine. I've taken care of plenty of people who have gone through that. And that's why I stick to healthcare. When I see the people that's suffering, it's just like, take your problems and throw them out. Because what you're seeing in front of you is far more than you, and they're teaching you something every single day. So I have not even taken that for granted.
Yeah, like in that too, it's like what you feed is what you grow. If
No
you
question.
feed every single person in the world, I don't care who you come in contact with, like it is a choice. You can shine the focus on all the shitty things that go on from the minute you wake up to the minute you go to sleep, because that's part of the human experience, right?
Yes,
and
it is.
if you shine the spotlight on that, that will be your life. But the adverse is true too, right? If I shine the spotlight on all the wonderful, whether it's a relationship or it's this conversation, right? Like that feels really good. And
It does.
we have that there. It might not be conscious for everyone, but you can work it to become conscious to see, hey, the yin and the yang of every situation, what do I want to go with?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. And it's definitely not an easy thing to do, but something that is really standing out to me is just like repetition. Hey, every day I did these things, and I constantly have things I'm working on in my life, and I don't necessarily always determine success by doing it perfectly every day. I determine success by when I don't do it, how quickly do I then do it again?
Yes.
Because I look out, even like working out, back when I started years ago, it'd be like, oh, I'd get out, I'd do great for a couple weeks, then I get out of a routine, and then I wouldn't work out for like 2 months.
Oh, yeah.
And now it's like, oh, if I miss like a day or two, it's like I'm back in, not because, well, I feel like crap about myself, but more so because I know how good I feel when I do it, right? But that took so much muscle memory to recognize that. Hey, I'm not cheating anyone else. I'm just selling myself short when I don't stick to my routines.
I agree.
No doubt. What you said, you've been 5 days straight?
Yeah, I've been getting 5 for like a couple months now, 5 days straight.
Getting busy.
I'm working at it, man. I'm trying to I just want to feel good.
I agree.
Well, that workout do feel good.
Mm-hmm.
I know for me, when I started working out, when I look back, my self-worth, my self-love was minimal, non-existent. And when I started working out, I don't know, like, I'm sure it's some scientific thing about it but once I started working out, my confidence started raising a little bit. The way I feel about myself started raising a little bit.
Oh, yeah.
My thought process started changing, you know what I'm saying? My self-worth started going up. So I know that what you said earlier about the mind, body, spirit, that holy trinity, you know what I'm saying? They all go hand in hand.
No question.
You know what I mean? And that's that all this is one big circle. Like I know Ben knows I'm real big on accountability, because the way that accountability helped change the course for your life, it did the same for me. You know what I'm saying? Once I became accountable and stopped blaming everybody else, oh man, it was a complete 180. Became a whole different person.
Yeah, ownership is everything, man.
Oh.
I would definitely, admit that. Even late ownership. I'd rather someone, or especially myself, come to the point of admitting your wrongdoing, whatever it might be, minor or major, rather than just be in denial about it. Or like you said, it's so easy to blame other people, even if you are justified in saying, these type of things kind of push me in that direction. I think ultimately when you just say, look, I made the decision, it was me, regardless of the mitigating factors, right? You made it. So where do you go from here now? And I always tell somebody, I don't mind being wrong if it helps me to grow. And that's the main thing.
Yeah, at the end of the day, most of the time, it's not that big deal, right? But two, I think that the biggest thing is if you don't take ownership, you are no longer playing by the rules of reality. And if you're not playing by the rules of reality, you're going to create either false solutions or false problems in which whatever you do, try to solve the problem or you think you have the solution, it's going to lead you to a dead end because it's not real. So taking ownership, it's remarkably empowering because it creates real choices in your life. And if I take ownership of something, hey, now I can actually act on it and move forward, or I can take ownership and do nothing with it, which might not move me forward, but at least I have two clear choices that I can pick from in my life.
I agree, and I think just to share like a different aspect of that, because I was able to take care of, men who were in hospice in the prison system, I would say a majority of them, a good 9 out of 10, were didn't do that until maybe a few hours before their death. And it's like, wow, why go a whole lifetime? And then realize it before you're about to end your life. And I felt so bad for them that it took all this time until you were about to take your last breath, or you were approaching that, to start acknowledging what you just mentioned. And that showed me a lot. Yeah.
That's real. That's and I don't know if it's a societal thing or just a human nature thing, but I feel like social media, all these distractions, and it's like we get caught up in all this little bullshit that don't really matter. You know what I mean? And then something real has to happen for you to be like, oh, this is what life's about. And you know what I mean?
That's so crazy. Because you're talking to somebody who actually who wasn't around this and then became around it. So when I went in, Microsoft Office 95 just came out.
That's got to be a trip.
Cell phones were...
I definitely remember that. I was there for that, bro.
So you got to have cell phones at that time. Was the Motorola Flip was just coming out. And you got to have immense credit, and the drug dealers and people who were wealthy could only afford those at that time.
Yes.
So to come in to leave society at that time, then come home, and it's not like I wasn't blind to the fact of these technological developments. I watched it happen, but I was on the outside looking in, and I'm watching everybody, these things happen. I'm like, this is amazing. And then come home and be smack dab in that pool of social media and stuff. There was a lot of, like having relationships and the way you like certain things on Facebook, and they're like, well, why did you like it like this? And I'm like, this was a different dynamic. I'm like, this don't mean nothing to me like it means something to you. But I had to be mindful that you guys grew up through the MySpace and the social media, so you saw that development. So a simple way you like or commented on something was way more impactful, whereas somebody like me, I'm like, I don't give a damn about that. I gave a heart. You're not supposed to do that. I'm like, well, why not? I loved what they said. They're like, no, that's a girl, and she might think you like her. I'm like, okay. So that part was very humbling to go through that, because I'm like, listen, we ain't have shit like that. We had a beeper. If you turn it upside down, you might see a different kind of message. And be like, that was cool to
Love.
us. Yeah, exactly. So we didn't really have this type of stuff here now. That's probably where I showed a little bit of a antiquity there with my old age. But
I was there for that.
The dynamic, the way life changed so much on the psychological aspect of social media is amazing.
It's funny because Ben basically has that same relationship with social media, and he's been here the whole time. See,
I don't fuck with it
at all. If it wasn't for the podcast, our nonprofit, you could have catch him on social media. But,
yeah. So it's funny now. It doesn't, like, I couldn't wait to be a part of it, and then when I got part of it, I was like, it's okay. So I do it rarely. Probably like to be able to network is amazing. Like this. Now you're talking to somebody who didn't have it to somebody who does have it now, and I see the beauty in it. I don't understand the fascination with it, like what he probably sees, even though he's went through the whole thing. I don't see how it's so important in people's life, because I think that kind of like takes them away from the natural part of life, and that's communication with each other on a physical level, and a personal level and stuff like that.
Yeah, I think the only thing that kind of intuitively makes sense given that is like, given even for me, like the majority of my childhood was pre-social media, and getting out and connecting, like that's the shit that I look forward to. That was fun doing it. Today, people just grow up and like that's what they know, you know, and it just is so deeply ingrained. And then you look at the biological components to it and how it is just targeted to constantly. It's the on and off switch for dopamine, right? Like it's flood all day. So it's really wild. But it actually makes me think of you guys were mentioning something going back to taking responsibility and accountability and like why that's so challenging and linking it to social media. But I think that also goes into like this evolutionary perspective where like our brains it's all about survival, whether we know it or not, right? Like that's cavemen didn't care about this. They cared about, let me not get eaten by this animal and let me live another day. And that is like our brain is primarily geared toward that. So if I acknowledge that I did something wrong, today's survival isn't am I going to get eaten by an animal, it's am I going to feel secure, am I going to feel confident, am I going to feel okay?
Yeah, so does that make you too vulnerable?
But that's it, right? So it totally goes against our evolution, but it also ties into that top brain thinking of, hey, if I take ownership, then I'm actually going to be able to move forward, let go, make amends, whatever the next step is. That's going to link me. And if I scale this out a month, a year, 5 years, I'm going to be so much further in my life than if I keep denying this truth that happened in my life.
But is it safe to say ownership is a freedom that's
it's everything.
That's amazing.
Yes.
When you can actually just be like, okay, yeah, you know what, I did it, I was wrong. It's just like,
yes.
Yeah, it's like when you tell that you tell that
amazing.
lie, and then you tell the next person, and then all of a sudden you go to sleep, and you're like, man, are they going to tell that dude that I just said that? And it's like you don't have that clear conscience, right? Like, no, when I put my head down on the pillow, like I just minimally I want to know that I was me today. You know, that I didn't do anything that I have to think about that's shady or isn't right or just against who I am, because that's the shit that keeps me up. And then I don't feel connected until I try to make up for it, you know?
Yeah.
So
Yeah. So switching gears. I know you in the form you filled out for us, I know you mentioned New Level Empowerment Program and just things that you're doing in the community when it comes to reentry. Can you share about that?
Sure can. So it's called Next Level Empowerment Program.
I said New Level?
Yeah.
Oh, damn.
It's all good, though, still.
Jay Scott, we got to take that out.
Yeah, so the creators, they're actually longtime New Haven residents, Jackie, James, Boyd, and Ray Boyd. And they're actually pretty known within the New Haven community. Ray Boyd served a 30-year sentence. I knew him from while we were incarcerated, and we're actually very close. They're the godparents of my newborn. Yeah, so they're beautiful. Amazing people. And they wanted to approach transitioning on a different level, on a completely holistic level that not only concentrates on specifically the returning citizen. And we like to say returning citizens because people basically, like I said, we're back to this identity thing again. Why are we continuing to strip people of their identities that are coming back home? If you serve your sentence and you did your time, why are they constantly being penalized and diminished, putting them in a position where they can repeat or, at worst, never love themselves and fall into some type of dark place? And Next Level Empowerment wanted to concentrate on not only the returning citizen, but the family. Whether there's children involved, there's a mother involved, grandmother involved, whoever's in there. And we're trying to make it a community and societal thing. And I thought they're very amazing. We're still, like any other nonprofit, you have your struggles. And we're, obviously getting funding. We're doing really well on our approach. We're having community discussions where we have a panel. And we will take certain kind of topics. And from there, we invite anyone in the entire state of Connecticut, but mostly New Haven community who are affected to come down, and we have a discussion, a Q&A discussion, the things that are, troubling people, especially people who have family and relatives that are incarcerated. There's so much people don't know, or they're justifiably preoccupied with life, trying to pay bills, trying to work, trying to take care of kids. They might not have the time to be able to try to research more things where they have relatives that might be incarcerated or are coming home. Because in my opinion, I don't think the incarceration element is ever going to leave the United States, only because it's there's a lot of money to be made off it on different levels.
Cash cow.
$1 billion, $1 trillion business, probably.
Trillion.
And the most recession-proof thing in the United States.
100%.
Yeah. So how can we try at least to diminish that or help the people who are going to obviously, be victim to this?
Yeah. So I want to say this because now I know Ray Boyd's going to listen to this. And I met Ray Boyd a couple months ago when we went to we have a collaboration with Yale School of Psychiatry with Annie Harper. Shout outs to Annie. And me and Jace went to this conference. I met Ray there, and me and him been going back and forth on emails to just to meet, not even podcast. You know what I mean? But anytime someone brings him up, you know what I mean, this is what a great man every single time. So Ray, I'm still gonna reach out. we gonna make this connection happen. I met someone else, and I can't think of her name, but I went to this other meeting in New Haven with City Hall, and someone from Next Level was representing. I figured it was that, but I wanted to make sure with this conversation. But I love what Ray represents, and I can't think of the other woman's name. It might have been Jackie Boyd.
That's his wife. Yeah.
Yeah, it might have been. I'm not 100% sure, but either way, she was well spoken, very passionate.
That's Jackie.
That's Jackie.
That's Jackie.
Yeah, she was very passionate.
She is a force, and she's determined. And obviously have been involved for several decades in terms of the New Haven community, and definitely trying to empower us and at least try to make things slightly better. Where definitely New Haven needs it, and but the great thing about them is they want to set the tone where whatever happens in New Haven creates this ripple effect throughout the state, and who knows, maybe it can continue to grow throughout the country.
No doubt.
You never know.
Yeah, it definitely can. It's necessary.
It's got to start somewhere.
Yeah,
and anything big. It's you water it every single day, and if we always talk about it, right? Like if you love something, you're gonna water it every day, and you keep doing that. Who knows when it's gonna grow? But one day that shit's gonna grow.
It's guaranteed to grow.
No doubt.
It's guaranteed. We started. We started our nonprofit as Winning Ways, and I'm gonna definitely invite you to the. I'm inviting you to the Beyonce brunch. We have a Beyonce brunch. You can bring the wife.
Not a problem.
It's dope. It's at Jazzy's August 27th. But we started this 2016, and yeah, this is something that's just we've done every single day, and like where we're at now to then is just amazing. But I think the main thing is we're nothing special. We're no different than anybody else. We just never stopped.
There you go.
That was it.
Yeah.
That's it.
I love that.
You know what I mean?
Man. Well, I know we're just about out of time, which is crazy. That flew by. But anything else you got? Questions in the bag that we didn't get to?
Nah, Nick, you're really good, man. Because the things when you were sharing, it was like knocking off questions I already had. You know what I'm saying? So, probably the only thing, if you want to just share where people could find you at, anything you want to promote, real estate company, just anything like that. Like, because for our guests, for our listeners to be able to contact you for any of your services.
Yeah, no question. Obviously, like I said, my name is Nicholas Aponte-Rodriguez. I am a realtor. You can reach me at 203-631-5119, and I'm with Lewis Real Estate Services. who obviously was began by a man who was exonerated. We believe in community. We believe in that everybody should have access to being able to own their own home, and how that empowers them, through having that equity. A lot of people, especially from, the neighborhoods that I grew up with, didn't believe that this was possible. And sometimes they might have to look into it a little more and realize that it's very possible for them to own their own home, especially when you're paying $2,000 a month for rent. That's a mortgage note. It's a mortgage note, and it's not really that difficult to be able to own a home as long as there's other financial measures that are in place. A lot of first-time homeowner programs that definitely help people tremendously. And I just, personally, I want to say, for people who are returning back into society, the challenges are going to be there. And if they didn't have the opportunity while on the inside, because the culture was too strong for them to focus on themselves, there's definitely opportunities out here. There's definitely ways that they can become the person that they want to be, especially if they're younger than me. Because here I am, I turned 46 in December. My whole goal is to be this certain type of person by the time I'm 50, because I'm approaching the wrong end, quote unquote, of 50 years old eventually, and there's a lot of things I would like to have in place. So if they are younger than me, the opportunities are there. It takes a lot of humility, a lot of humbleness, which I hope that they're able to acquire, man or woman, when they're coming home. And once the Next Level Empowerment Program gets a nice foothold, we're definitely going to have that opportunity to be able to help a lot of them transition back into society, which I forgot to mention. We're actually going to have what's called a warm line. And that warm line is going to be for anybody that needs to talk to somebody, nonstop, 24/7. Being able to talk to somebody who's actually, been through the incarceration, who knows how to give some sort of direction to succeed out here.
That's dope.
Oh, yeah.
That's dope. A warm line. Yeah. So yeah. I like that. That's
It's getting there. There's great out there, great ideas, and there is which the only unfortunate thing about the social media age is there's a lot of good things happening with people, and it's underreported. We only see the bad things or the tantalizing things, but there's so many people out there doing the hard work, doing the good work. Like when I heard about your podcast, I was like, falling up. I like that. Yeah, that was a great name to put together, and it was very catchy. And I thought that, okay, you know what? This is definitely something I would be honored to be a part of.
We're definitely honored is almost too strong. I feel truly grateful, blessed to be able to have this conversation with you. You're an inspiration, man.
Thank you.
Right? It's such high level. Never mind being incarcerated for as long as you were and being able to find yourself and find how to master your mind and all the other things you accomplished. That's so that is contagious. I look at you and you can see it. You there's something just looking at you where you're like, this dude seems like he's at peace, and that is it's powerful. So I'm so glad to have gotten to hear your story and for you to come out and share some time with us. And this is what it's all about. And I look forward to seeing, again, you're 5 years into this new journey, right? So I'm looking forward to hearing 10, 15, 20. I'm looking forward to see where this roller coaster goes, man.
I'm yours, man.
Truly.
Yeah, no doubt. Same here.
I appreciate it.
Likewise.
Thanks, everybody.
The Falling Up Podcast.